This is Wickett on Wisconsin. My name's Mike Wickett. After 10 years in Milwaukee talking sports, I took a bit of a break, but now I'm back and here to talk about the Packers, the Bucks, the Brewers, and more with you. And now inside the Koss Headphone Studios, this is Wickett on Wisconsin with me, Mike Wickett. All right, it's another episode of Wickett on Wisconsin. All right, so here's what we're going to talk about here. Obviously, this is going to be a little Big Ten themed after the madness that was the Big Ten week. Okay. Coming up, I'm going to tell you about why I'm a giant hypocrite. I'm going to fully admit that I'm a giant hypocrite, and it's okay. You know what? Selfishly, I'm going to tell you why I'm a giant hypocrite. But first, let's recap where the Big Ten has actually come from and where we're going now. And as I record this, there is no schedule out because the Big Ten is going to play. There is no schedule yet. August 11th, the Big Ten said we're going to pause fall sports. All right? Before that, like 6 days before that, let's even back it up further. So the virus hits, and we know what happened with the NBA. And we know what happened with Major League Baseball, and you know what happened with college basketball because that's when it initially hit. And it was like, okay, what about football? Football is what really, really matters. It's what matters financially to conferences like the Big Ten. It's what matters to fans on Sundays more than anything. Football is the national pastime. It's not baseball anymore. Sorry if you still think it is. You're wrong. So everybody's waiting to see what's going to happen. Having my morning coffee as I'm recording this. So the Big Ten says, well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to limit conference play, we're going to limit the schedule to conference play because of travel. And somebody brought up a great point when the Big Ten, on August 5th or August 6th or whatever it was, said we're just going to go with, and I think I talked about this when the schedule came out. I did an entire podcast on the Badger schedule. And the question was, what's the difference between how is it safer for Wisconsin to travel to Rutgers or Michigan to travel to Rutgers or Ohio State to travel to Maryland or whomever they were going to play? How is it travel to go from state to state? That's fine, right? But we had to cancel Notre Dame at Lambeau Field against the Badgers? Like, that didn't make a lot of sense. That didn't resonate with a whole lot of people. I questioned a lot of that. That's a really good point somebody brought up. But the Big Ten said we're going to play a conference-only schedule. Okay, cool, conference only. That's fine. Old school, you don't get to see directional Michigan or Northern Illinois or Appalachian State. You don't get to see any of those, which is fine. Like, I'd rather see Wisconsin play all the Big Ten as opposed to, or a lot of the Big Ten. You know, you can play a 10-game schedule, your conference, and then a couple of crossovers. I'm sorry, your division, and then a couple of crossovers. I was fine with that. Like, if that's where we're going to go, that's cool. I'm fine with that. Other conferences are doing similar things. And then 6 days later, that went from, we're going to play a limited schedule to, we're not playing. And I'm going to tell you right now, I was fine from a state of, I get it, you're being extra cautious about COVID-19 because we didn't know a whole lot yet. We still don't know a whole lot, obviously, feels like. But we didn't know in the beginning weeks of August about myocarditis, if I pronounced that right. It's the heart disease that you can get from it. It damages your lungs long term, and football players are just as susceptible to it as me, as you. Coaches, players, referees, whatever, are just as susceptible. So the Big Ten was going to go extremely cautious and say, we're going to just pull the plug and we're not playing. And people were livid. People were livid in Ohio. People were livid in Michigan. People were livid in Nebraska. You got Scott Frost talking about leaving the conference till he realized what a $50 million a year mistake that was going to be. So from then, you heard all the other news of the other conferences. Now, the Pac-12 followed the Big Ten. The ACC, the SEC, and the Big 12 all said, no, we're going to play. We're going to limit our schedule. We're going to shrink our schedule, but we're going to go ahead and play. And Big Ten Commissioner Kevin Warren came out shortly after and said, nope, there is no way we're playing. Don't you dare think about asking us. We are not going to play. Don't even bring it up. And you know what happened? You had protests, you had marches from some of the biggest names in the Big Ten, including Michigan's Jim Harbaugh and all these other coaches. Kirk Ferentz was not thrilled with it. Scott Frost, as you know, was not terribly thrilled with this decision. Ryan Day at Columbus, a school who, depends on college football almost as much as any school in the country in terms of popularity, in terms of dollars, in terms of money coming in. And B, that's the Big Ten's best chance at a national champion every single year. Like, you can say what you want about the Wisconsin Badgers. They're great in the West. They can't beat Ohio State. They haven't proven they can beat Ohio State in a Big Ten title game yet. Michigan doesn't matter. Jim Harbaugh is 0-5 in his first five against Ohio State. Penn State is like Wisconsin of the East. They're good. They get a couple of big wins, and then they can never actually finish the job, unfortunately, when it comes to it. It's Ohio State. We've all accepted that, right? Like, this is the big one in little 13. I've accepted that. And so you've got all these protests and marches and statements and interviews, and people are upset, and frivolous lawsuits are being filed against the conference. And meanwhile, Kevin Warren, the commissioner, is like, nope, don't you even think about it. Ain't happening, not a chance, no way, it's not happening. We're all about the kids and safety. And then this week happened. Where all of a sudden, the Big Ten has reversed course. And it's so weird because, while I thought the Big Ten was going to be the leader in all of this and listening to science, because a lot of the school presidents, and that's who gets to vote, by the way. It's not athletic directors, and it's not football coaches, and it's not players or anything. It's the school presidents. They're the ones that had to vote. And it was 11-3 in favor of not playing back in early August. And then I think they had to get 9 votes to go the other way. And eventually, after some meetings, and more importantly, after the SEC and after the Big 12 and ACC have pulled off some games, and some other non-major Power 5 games have gone off, it was weird. They were like, maybe we need to talk. We need to get back into the game here. And I love seeing all the reasoning come out, because there was all kinds of speculation all weekend long, all week last week, actually, about how the Big Ten was potentially going to meet, and the presidents were going to have conversations, and the presidents and the athletic directors and, health officials and Kevin Warren, the Big Ten commissioner, who's getting a lot of flack, by the way. We're all going to meet. We have to talk about this. Rightfully so. That's the thing to me about science. It changes. You learn more. It's fine. And then we come to find out that there was conversation over this last weekend, and then there was a vote, and the decision has been made that the Big Ten is back. Big Ten football is coming back. Now, all these different things that they're telling you, and I could run through every little hoop you have to jump through. The Big Ten's daily rapid testing program begins September 30th on all 14 campuses, which is strange because we don't have daily rapid testing for people like you and me, but we have it for athletes. We don't have it for the elderly in some of these college towns like Ann Arbor or Madison or East Lansing or Columbus. We don't have it for regular Joes like you and me, but we got it for athletes. That's a little troublesome, but okay. Each Big Ten team will designate a chief infection officer to report data about testing to the league, which will make decisions about practice and competition based on team positivity rate and population positivity rate. Players who test positive for COVID-19 must wait at least 21 days to return to competition, as they will undergo comprehensive cardiac testing before being cleared by a cardiologist designed by each university primarily for that purpose. Concerns about myocarditis and inflammation of the heart muscle caused by blah, 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 blah. The Big Ten is going to use a color-coded system, green, red, orange, for both team positivity rates and population positivity rates. And it's great. If they want to sit here and get on their pedestal and say, well, we've learned more about testing and we've learned more about positivity rates and we've got these checks and balances in line, 2 things cross my mind. First of all, why weren't you doing this in June? Why weren't you coming up with a plan for positive rates, population density? You're a lot smarter than I am. Like, I'm not the smartest dude in the world. I'm a guy who had a career sitting behind a microphone. I'm a guy who now stares into my laptop doing a podcast. All right. This is my gig, along with taking care of my children. Like, that's my job. And even I knew in June and July, you should have had a plan going. Okay, what if rates do increase? What if cases do increase? What if the city is bad? Can you quarantine the kids? What are you doing? That's the first thing that popped into my mind. The second thing is, stop lying to us. Dear Big Ten presidents, stop lying to us. What you saw over the weekend was the ACC, led by Clemson, the Big 12, and some of these other conferences, these little guys, successfully play football and make money. That's the bottom line. Yeah, it's great we've got new ways to test or rapid testing, and you now have a color-coded system of green, orange, and red and all that. But let's be real here. The reason the Big Ten has decided we're going to play this limited schedule starting in late October is money. The Big Ten Network pays $750 million to these schools. The conference makes $759 million in television revenue. They've already lost a chunk of that, not a massive chunk, but they've lost a chunk of that because the first couple of weeks of September are now in the rearview mirror. They're going to lose a bigger chunk of that because we're not going to get to football till mid-October. And more importantly, because of Ohio State, the Big Ten wants a chance at the Final Four because that's more money. This is great. They can sit on their thrones and wave their rapid testing in your face, but this is about money. That's what this is about. That's what the Big Ten is about right now. That's why the Big Ten is playing football right now. And here's the other question. Has anybody noticed what's been going on in these cities in the Big Ten? All of East Lansing, all Michigan State students have to quarantine because it's getting so bad. You think it's bad there? It's even worse in Madison. Now, they haven't taken the extreme measures of quarantining every student or encouraging every student to quarantine, but the outbreak is bad in Madison in terms of cases, positive results, hospitalizations. It's bad in Madison. It's bad in Bloomington. I do some work for a small cluster of radio stations in the Bloomington area as a freelance thing. Every day, it's just going up in Bloomington. It's happening all around the Big Ten. Every city in the Big Ten is seeing a rise in cases. What? And now we're deciding let's play football? Now, I don't think there's going to be any fans at any of these games, so that's probably smart. If there's a way that these kids can go to and from the stadium, let's say it's Wisconsin, and they can go to and from Camp Randall to their athletic dorms or wherever they live. They go to the athletic facilities and then back to Camp Randall, and then that's it. Okay, it's kind of like a mini bubble, but these are college kids. You telling me that after a win over Nebraska that somebody on the Wisconsin football team's not going to want to go out and celebrate? Come on. You're telling me that they're not going to go to a party at 19, 20, 21? Maybe it's some 18-year-old kid who thinks, I don't really play that much. Who cares if I get it? I'm going to go to this party. I was an idiot at 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 39 still. But I was an idiot when I was in my early 20s. These kids are dumb. They're college kids. We were all stupid. You don't think that somebody's going to screw this up and bring it? What happens, and I know I could read through all of these things, but what happens if one kid brings it into the Badger locker room, or one kid brings it into the Purdue locker room, or one kid brings it in, and then boom, 10 kids test positive? Here's why I'm a hypocrite. I'm going to get to this too. Here's the other part of why I'm a hypocrite. So I'm happy Big Ten football is back, despite the fact that I think it's a completely stupid idea. I think I love the fact that I get to watch Big Ten football because I'm a Big Ten guy. You're probably a Big Ten person too. If you watch, if you're watching or listening to this podcast, then you're probably a Badger fan. Odds are we're not doing Wickett on Alabama here. We're doing Wickett on Wisconsin. Here's why I'm a hypocrite. As dumb as I think this is, to play games with no bubble, and you can't bubble an NFL team and the NFL. You can't bubble college football like you could with the NBA because that's worked out really, really well. Not for the Bucs on the court, but it's worked out really, really well health-wise. I loved last Saturday and Sunday. I loved last Thursday. I loved last Saturday. And I loved last Sunday. And I even loved last Monday until I couldn't stay awake watching that second Monday night game. As dumb as I think this really is, to be playing college football, to be playing in the NFL right now, to be playing games with a pandemic going on that we don't have under control. I love it. So does that make me a hypocrite? I think so. Like, I'm going to sit here and complain on a podcast that we should not be doing this. And then you know what I do on Sundays? I pray my kids sleep a lot longer than normal so I can watch the entire Packer game and not get interrupted. On Saturday, my wife went to Iowa State. And so we watched Iowa State lose to Louisiana. But you know what? Between Saturday and Sunday, it's the first time, and my life is completely upside down from my previous life before children, before I was a stay-at-home father. So it's my life is very, very different right now. COVID aside, my life is very different. And I think there are a lot of people whose lives they need to get back to normal because COVID has affected them in so many ways, and it sucks. But for the first time, I think, since I have been a stay-at-home father without my wife being here, like I've been off since December of 2019. And the kids were born early January. My wife was home for 2 months, and then she went back to work. And so I'm about 6-7 months into being a stay-at-home dad. For the first time since I have quit my job and focused on my family, I felt normal this weekend because of college football, because of the National Football League, because of checking fantasy scores, because of scoreboard watching, because of just sitting there watching pregame hype. I felt normal. And I know there's a lot of people who have been screaming, we need to get sports back so we can feel normal. And then you have the people who are like, hey, we shouldn't be doing this because there's this whole virus thing that's killing a lot of people and making people sick. And you're both right. Like, everybody's right on this. We do have a pandemic that is hurting and killing a large amount of people in this country. But also, at what point do we get back to normal? I don't know. Sitting on my couch, watching games, I felt really freaking normal last weekend. And it felt really, really good. So when the Big Ten does get back and rolling, when Wisconsin is playing, and again, I don't have a schedule yet. We don't know a schedule yet. As I'm recording this at 9:45 in the morning on the 17th of September. We don't know the schedule yet. But when it does come out, and when the games start happening in a couple of weeks, and they have jammed it into the tightest window possible that would still allow potentially a Big Ten team to get into the college football playoff, I'm going to be watching. Hell, I'm going to be watching when the SEC starts up soon. I watched a lot of the Big 12 and ACC and some of these other games. I didn't watch the first weekend, like Florida, Alabama, Georgia line, or whoever versus UAB. I didn't even care that much about BYU Navy, which turned out to be a dud of a football game. But when the big boys start, when the Power Five start, when the ACC, the SEC, the Big 10, and the Big 12, and the Pac-12 is a different story, although they're having conversations too as I'm recording this, and so is the Mountain West. But when the big boys start playing, I'm watching. And I know that makes me sound like a hypocrite. I'll own it. I'm just accepting the fact that we are going to have something that maybe we probably shouldn't, but that doesn't mean I'm going to boycott it. I'm still going to be watching a lot of college football, and I'm still going to be watching a lot of the NFL as long as we have it. And who knows, it may get shut down. The Big Ten, all of a sudden, after 3 weeks of games, might have a pandemic inside of the pandemic. Maybe it infects the entire Penn State locker room. Maybe all of Illinois comes down with COVID. Maybe Iowa has a major outbreak. I mean, there were a couple of weeks ago, Iowa City was the hottest spot or the second hottest spot in the entire country. The second hottest spot was Ames, Iowa, or the number one was Ames, Iowa, which is amazing. So the Big Ten has really done a number on its image. The Big Ten has done a number on showing that it has everything under control because as we're noticing, it doesn't. The Big Ten does not have it under control. The Big Ten seemingly is just kind of, I wish there would have been a plan. I wish there would have been a plan in June and July, and I know how hard it is to have a plan, but I wish there would have been one because right now it feels like the Big Ten has just been knee-jerk. We're in. We're conference only. Nah, we're kidding. Don't even ask us. Well, maybe we can't. Because, again, they watch money get made by the ACC and the Big 12, and they wanted a piece of it. Hey, thanks for listening to this episode of Wickett on Wisconsin. I'm Mike Wickett. I'm a hypocrite, and I'm cool with it. And maybe you're just like me. Maybe you're excited to watch, even though you know what you're watching is being done for money. It's got nothing to do with pride and blah, blah, blah. I mean, fans aren't going to be allowed at most of these games anyway, but that TV revenue, Cha-ching. Hey, we'll do another Wickett on Wisconsin coming up. We'll definitely get into the Packers and the Lions by this weekend. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Mike Wickett. This has been Wickett on Wisconsin. As always, go Pack, go Bucks, and go Brewers. Turn my lights off. There we go. As always, go Pack, go Bucks, and go Brewers. And in this case, on Wisconsin.